Hey, this is Mr. Glista bringing you ETC episode 2. Now, this one's going to be a lot different because it's not called Happy Fun Time Podcast. It's called Ever the Contrarian. So, I want to dive into a more serious topic this time, that being religion. Now, that being said, this is not an attack on religion. I have a lot of great friends that are devoutly religious. I think it serves them very well. I more so want to talk about my tumultuous upbringing and relationship with Catholicism. So my family went to church every Saturday afternoon when I was growing up, and we went to Sunday school, me and my siblings. I did from, I want to say second grade through, confirmation, which was early in high school or middle school, so many years. And honestly, the only things that linger with me from Catholicism in particular are guilt, shame, and the ability to recognize hypocrisy. Now, like I said, this is not an attack on religion. This is my personal experience, and it happened to be not so great, but I think a lot of children go through the same kind of experience, and especially if you're a parent that wants to bring your child up in a religious household, you're going to hear a lot of things not to do. And it kind of starts with, I've heard from a lot of parents that kids are kind of born with their own personality and their own traits, and I mean, whether you believe it's from a past life or genetics or wherever that comes from, everyone's kind of predisposed to have their own ways of thinking. I'm not saying it's necessarily a perfectly aligned moral compass, but we've all got our things that we really care about. For me, that's freedom, like free will, everybody able to choose their own way, what they do, and peace. I think that's an easy one. It's easy to say you want world peace, you want an end to conflict, but really those are the two things that I care about the most. Do people have freedom, and do people have peace? Now, that wasn't always the message being preached to me in Sunday school and in church, so it seemed. There was a sense of zealotry to an extent in my church in Streamwood, St. John's the Evangelist Church. It was pretty old school, big, wooden church with a lot of stained glass windows and, oh my gosh, pews like 30 rows back and a guy up front preaching to everybody else. And there was kind of like an ominous air of reverence. It was always kind of like an unsettling place for me. I liked the music, I liked the singing. To this day, Hosanna is a banger, the traditional way, not this new way. But yeah, you just weren't allowed to ask questions. And I was a very curious, questioning kid. I remember driving my dad nuts on one car ride, asking how batteries worked, and I just kept going like, how, or why, or how? And it got to the point where he was like, it's just the way it works, okay? I was one of those kids. I'm sure some of you have kids like that, or, we're a kid like that. But just the inability to ask questions and my Sunday school teachers getting frustrated with me was very off-putting. And I quickly got the sense that, like, they didn't have my best interests in mind. Instead, they were just really trying to push an agenda on me. And that conflicted with my notion of freedom. Is like, wait, I'm not free to ask for a clarification or get a better understanding. And it kind of became apparent to me that they didn't really know what they were talking about. And to this day, one of the personal issues I have with the notion of organized religion is that I don't think any two people really truly believe in exactly the same thing. There's gotta be some variations somewhere in our minds, and even very devout religious people all read from the same book, all read the same scriptures, but the interpretation always leaves room for variation. Now, that being said, one of the things that my church was very strict on was abortion, and they were very pro-life. I remember being in, I want to say 5th or 6th grade, and we had this one catechism class where somebody came in from another place, I want to say some institution or another church, and they rolled out, this was very old school, they rolled out like a TV on one of those carts, put in a VHS tape, and they made us watch like an actual abortion procedure, like the fetus getting sucked out of a uterus with like a vacuum, and it was disgusting to say the least, and very inappropriate for kids our age. And there was just like a lot of propagandizing and a lot of trauma going on, for lack of a better word. And they gave us all these little plastic fetuses to put in our hands, and we're like, this is the size of a fetus, and this is what they're killing, and it has a heartbeat, and yada yada. Now, if you're pro-life, I'm not bashing your position by any means. I'm very lightly pro-choice. I don't glorify abortion. I think it's a necessary evil and something that people should be free to choose to do, and I don't think anyone chooses to do it lightly. I think it's a very serious and, for lack of a better word, traumatic experience for anyone. And I don't think any sane person wants to go through it more than once. So, there are circumstances where I think it's the choice that people are allowed to make, but I don't have a lot of skin in that game. I've never been involved with one, so to each their own. I'm not going to take a strong stance there. But I did not like the way that they presented it to 5th and 6th graders. And at the end of this propagandizing session, they had us all stand up from our seats. I want to say there were like 60 of us maybe between the 2 or 3 CCD classes that were going on. And they literally said, if you think abortion is wrong, stand over here on this side of the room. If you think abortion is okay, go over there on that side of the room. Well, I learned a big lesson that day, that you have to stand up for how you feel and what you think is right, because I'll be damned if I was not the only kid of those 60-some to go to the other side of the room. Now, it wasn't because I thought abortion was great or like I was really standing up for abortion as a right, but I was just so off-put by the whole presentation, and maybe it's because I'm a descendant of people who escaped communism, but I'm very sensitive to propaganda, and it pisses me off, and I just feel the need to resist. Thus the podcast title. So this was like a very formative experience for me, because I remember standing on the opposite side of that room, looking back at all my classmates, their faces in disbelief, some of them, their jaws dropped, other classmates kind of grinning and smirking. Some probably wanted to join me on that side but didn't have the balls to. And of course the staff members were appalled because they didn't expect anyone to go to that side. So I guess I labeled myself as the heathen that day, but still went through with the sacrament of confirmation eventually. But I mean, those are the kind of uncomfortable experiences you are subjecting your children to if you have them go to a Sunday school at a church that is not necessarily as compassionate as you might want it to be. Now, maybe you want your kids to go through that. Hey, you're the parents. That's your choice as far as I'm concerned. I'm just explaining how it made me feel. And maybe you have a child who kind of has my tendencies, and they're probably going to do the same thing, and it's going to push them away from religion instead of bringing them to it. Another very uncomfortable religious experience for me was, so I'd always kind of felt that way, that like ever since I was not allowed to question things, it just made me doubt the whole, I don't know, it made me doubt what I was being taught in those classes, and it made me doubt religion, and is there a God, and what of these teachings is really true, and what of it is just being crammed down my throat, because that's how it felt. So I remember I think my dad and I were going up to like some, it was like a canoe trip up in Michigan or Wisconsin. And so we had a long car ride and we were just kind of shooting the breeze and talking about different things and listening to music. And I know I'd like wanted to say this to him for a long time because I felt so guilty and I wanted to get it off my chest. So I was like, Dad, I have something to say to you, but I don't know how you're going to take it. But like, I just really feel the need to say it. And he was like, yeah, what's up? I said, I don't think I believe in God. And whew, the look he gave me, I will never forget because it struck me to my core. And the only way I can describe it is the kind of look that means you're not my son. It was very judgmental. It was a look that I can't really recall ever receiving before or since. And he, the mood changed, got very serious, and he was just very disappointed and tried to tell me that, like, I had to, basically. And it was very much the same feeling that I got from my Sunday school classes. Like, it's this way or the highway. You're not allowed to question. This is the way it is. And some people just can't accept that. Some people are why people. We're curious people. We're contrarians. And if you want us to go along with what you're doing, you have to really sell us on it being the best thing for us and that you're looking out for our best interests and that's, come from a place of love, not a place of judgment and demand. Well, that was weird and it strained our relationship. And it was another thing that kind of pushed me away from religion and God because it just didn't feel like a loving thing, for lack of a better word. Now that was like early on in high school when that happened. I want to say I was a freshman. No, I'm almost positive I was a freshman actually. Then I remember just that kind of festering in me, just this dislike for religion, to the extent where I very distinctly remember in junior year English class, we used to have all kinds of crazy debates and go on tangents about things. And one day we were learning about, I don't remember the guy's name. Oh, Calvin. I want to say it was maybe John Calvin, but this like very fire and brimstone, what do you call them? Puritan preacher. People who believed in predeterminism and just basically like the ills of religion, witch hunt stuff. I related to it a lot. It almost, I was feeling deja vu. I was like, oh, I recognize this. This is kind of how my Sunday school was. Very talked at instead of talked with, and very preached to instead of thought-provoking. And so we had this big heated discussion, and I brought up this analogy that I thought God was, oh gosh, if there are kids listening, this is a time to switch the station or cover your kids' ears, because I don't want to spoil something for them. But we had this debate, and I brought up this metaphor that God is like Santa Claus for adults, that he's not real. It's just this thing to maintain order for the masses. And just like children act good because they expect a reward, they think Santa's always watching them and they want presents and they want to be acknowledged. God is a way to control people into thinking that there's this afterlife promised to them and it's the gift if they're good little people. And that's really the way that I had gotten to think about it, is that religion is a control mechanism and that I should resist it because I'm better than that. I'm above that. I don't need to be controlled. Now, do I think that to this day? No. That's the worst of what religion has to offer. That's the bastardized version of religion. But it's a shame that some people have turned it into that instead of it being, a positive, a beneficial thing in someone's life. I even remember there being like a particularly religious kid in that class whose dream it was to like be a pastor or a priest or something of that nature. And he was like appalled, and the look in his eyes was like, he was just stunned that I was saying these things. And it made me feel good to piss him off and to make him question everything. Just because, that saying, misery loves company. I was so ticked off by the way that I felt like religion had betrayed me all those years that I wanted him to feel the same way. Like, dude, wake up. This is what they're doing to you. Now, in hindsight, I feel guilty about that because it wasn't my place to make him feel that way, and who was I to know? I was just rebelling for lack of, I don't know, a better explanation against what I felt like had wronged me. And then it got even worse because in college, I found a group called Atheists, Agnostics, and Free Thinkers, AAF. That was a student organization. And now, I think they had good intentions, but it ended up just kind of being a team who was opposed to religion. And I don't know, it's like when you get to be a part of something like that, there aren't really positive goals stated. Like, I don't think their mission was one of unity. It was kind of one of like division and one of attacking and one of like dismantling religion. Sounds like a lot of liberal causes these days, which I think are very ill-directed. And if you're part of a group that's not promoting, unity and love and acceptance, I don't think it's necessarily a good group. So I fell into that trap, and the reason that atheism is dangerous, so I came to understand, is because atheism is kind of a doorway to nihilism, and nihilism is like the belief that humans are evil, and the belief that population is too large and we need to get rid of humans and depopulate, and having kids is evil, and we've reached the carrying capacity of Earth, and humans are a parasite and a scourge on the Earth. Totally wrong way of thinking. I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. I used to think it was selfish to want to have kids because you just want to, promote your own genes, and wow, you're so selfish. There are kids who could be adopted, and you want to put more people on Earth, and we already can't handle how many there are. I have totally 180'd from that. I think the most noble thing you can do in this day and age is have children. I think it's a burden that people take on themselves to keep the human species going, and if you are a parent, God bless you. I'm not yet. I would love to be, but nowadays it drives me crazy how people brag about being a dink, dual income, no kids. It's like, come on, get over yourselves. What are you think you're helping the Earth by not having kids? You think you're reducing the carbon footprint and all that bullshit? Like, no. Don't brag about not having kids. If anything, just lay low and support those who do have kids. That's my current way of thinking. Now, I'm not saying that humans don't do bad things. Humans have done very bad things to the Earth through industrialization, and one of the unsung heroes of past generations is Rachel Carlson, who wrote the book Silent Spring, or published it in 1962, and it discussed the dangers of the pesticide DDT, which was a serious threat to the ecology, wildlife, and humans too. Now, the sad thing is, there are modern equivalents to DDT, which are glyphosate and, what's the other one? Seed oils. Terrible things for us, yet we pretend like they're not even a threat. Why? Because big business interests use them constantly, and they're essential to their business models, and God forbid those things get threatened, they wouldn't be able to make money. That probably sounds familiar to some of you in other aspects. But yeah, don't demonize carbon emissions and all that stuff, because I think it's a distraction. I think it's nihilist. I think it's propaganda. Have kids. There aren't enough on the Earth. Be good people. Seek truth, not that kind of stuff. Don't be part of a team, especially a nihilist team. Because these are the same people that will drop thousands of bombs on certain regions, and I don't think those bombs and those giant explosive plumes going up into the atmosphere are good for the Earth, but the same people will tell you to reduce your carbon footprints as they're bombing people. So, think for yourself. Don't get swept up in that team. But all right, after all that, where do I currently stand on religion? Well, I think I need a framework for my life and a way to explain to people that I'm not just some what should I say, unshackled person who has no moral compass. Thank God I was raised by a very, very thoughtful mother who imposed a gigantic conscience on me and made me a very selfless person with a lot of empathy. And I've kind of used that to guide myself and make the right decisions and navigate life. But I've really lately wanted to put into a simple framework of how can I explain to people what I think about religion and what I value. And the first pillar of that is reject hubris and embrace humility. Hubris is the belief that you are certain of something, often unjustified certainty. I'm the kind of person who subscribes to the George Gammon rebel capitalist notion that there are no certainties, only probabilities. I'm never more than 99.9% certain of things. I think that's a very healthy way to live. I never get to 100%. I don't have that capacity for faith. For me, faith is 99.9. I'm 99.9% sure the earth is round because there's a preponderance of evidence. I might be a serious conspiracy theorist, but flat earth is... No. That's one of those conspiracy theories to make conspiracy theorists look stupid. I'm 99.9% sure that there is air around me that I'm breathing in and absorbing the oxygen from. I can't see it, I can't necessarily feel it, but it's there because, there's enough evidence. Why would I question that? But there are other things that you do have to question, and even some of those 99.9 things, if there is other evidence brought to light that slaps you in the face, and you got to understand that, wow, even those things I thought I was borderline certain about are not true, you got to be willing to adapt. I think adaptability is one of humanity's greatest strengths. So, yeah, reject hubris, embrace humility. That is the first pillar of my personal religion, for what that's worth. Call me a heathen if you want, but even if you are the most devout religious person, if you're a good person that loves humans and just wants peace and wants everybody to be free, hey, I love you. I support you. That's all I ask. So I'm going to wrap up with a song, no more serious talk. And this time, it's going to be the last song on my latest album, Homestretch. This one's called Long Winter. And that's because it can be interpreted literally, because there's like a foot of snow everywhere outside right now in Chicagoland and the greater Midwest, and I know parts of New England, and it is freezing. I think the temperature is like -10 right now, so yeah. But there's also a metaphorical level to this song, that it's for all those people who are just kind of lost and adrift like I once was, and I hope you make it home. Unbeknownst to me, the camera battery ran out on the first take, so I got a practice take. Here's number 2. Once the windows have all been closed, you're stuck inside with no place to go. I hope you find yourself comfortable. Just sit around and watch the falling snow. if you're out on the road, cold and alone, may you reach your destination. And won't you please make it home, 'cause it's gonna be a long winter. When will it be over? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Bundle up now, warm those toes, get yourself the hottest mug of cocoa, round the fireplace, feel it glow, as the scent of evergreen surrounds your frozen nose. And if you're out on the road, cold and alone, may you reach your destination. And won't you please make it home, 'cause it's gonna be a long winter. When will it be over? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Oh, have a great Martin Luther King Jr. Day. See you next time.